what we try to do during this symposium, as many of you know, we are doing it to celebrate our heritage within the Hispanic Heritage Month. For many of us that were alive when this started, it was actually a week. In '68, Congress decided to have a week to celebrate our history and heritage, and then in '88 it became a whole month. And the reason for it is because we certainly are many more, but we want to make sure it is during the times when our Latin American countries are celebrating their independence. So it starts September 15th, ends October 15th. I want to say that many of us know this, but it is important to understand that for us as Hispanic, we are very much committed to our natural resources, land, and what comes from it, especially folks like me that like to eat. In the future, when you get to look at these presentations, we'll have some data to show how many Hispanics are across the U.S., how much we have grown. I'll say one of the significant things for us is that during the 80s and the 90s, the growth of Hispanics was led by immigration, and today is babies. And so it is important to understand that for those that see us as folks moving in, is going to be folks that in 20 years are born here. And so we have already states like California, and we have our dear friend Carlos Suarez with us, that have a majority of the state is a race and an ethnicity that represents us Hispanics. So we continue to make significant contributions to agriculture, and we have to make significant contributions as leaders in agriculture. So today you'll hear from farmers. That will come next, farmer panel we put together, then followed by a discussion of the coronavirus assistance program for farmers. Then we'll follow a professionals panel, many leaders, Hispanic leaders that have been working in different agencies, and they'll be speaking to the work that they have done. And then in the afternoon, we'll focus a little bit more on the future and the youth. We're going to start our farmers panel. I'd like to pass it on to my colleague, José Indio Sanchez. He's coming from Puerto Rico, and he'll have a group of farmers that will participate in a discussion. And so I'll pass it to you, Indio.
Thank you, Nolo. And thank you for this opportunity to introduce this panel of agriculture folks. Hello, everyone that is here with us in this third symposium. My name is José Sanchez. In the company, they know me as Indio. And during this morning, we're going to have a panel of diverse farmers to speak about the experience in the conservation of natural resources. This morning, I have with me
Agrónomo
Edwin Mas, an engineer, Diego Piñeiro, from Hacienda Santa Elena de la Sabana in Ciales, Puerto Rico. I also have with me Mr. Luis Hernández. Luis, you can turn on your camera.
Luis Hernández, agricultor principiante.
He is a beginner agriculture from Ponce, Puerto Rico, who is the owner of the farm La Carreta. Additionally, I have in this panel, good morning, Luis. Good morning, everyone. I also have the agronomist Emaly Quintana, who is part of the project of the farm Terra Nova, who is in San Sebastián, Alto Arriba neighborhood. And she conducts a project with her sister, Nicole Quintana. So we welcome her as well. Good morning, Emaly. And lastly, this morning, the producer Monica Hernández-Melancon, Sunset, Louisiana. Good morning, Monica.
Hola, Mónica.
Hello,
Saludos.
Monica.
Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. Hello,
Qué
hello.
bueno tenerlos a todos aquí.
It is
Bueno,
a pleasure to have you all and that
brindarle
you
al
can
público que nos
provide
mañana de hoy
uh,
experiencia, ¿verdad?
the
Que hemos
people
conocido
here
en
your
la
experience in
rurales
this
y
path
su
to the
experiencia,
conservation of
¿verdad?
natural resources and your experience in your relation with USDA.
Vamos a hablar un poco, ¿verdad?
We're
De
going to
cada
speak a
uno,
little bit about each one of you. I invited farmers. It's Luis Hernandez. He's the director and owner of Finca La Carreta.
Ok, Luis, como les dije, esta finca está localizada en
This farm is located in the Divel Ponce neighborhood.
cuenta con 3 cuerdas
It
y
has 3
agroecológico.
acres. It's an ecological project. He's started in 2 years in agriculture and is focusing in the coffee and plantain farms. He has a relationship with the USDA. In 2019, he started with the farm agency, and currently he has established a conservation practice like mulching and the water harvesting.
Para darle un poco de trasfondo de Luis, él tiene un
To talk a little bit about, he has administration of business administration, concentration and accountability. In 2019, he started in agriculture and he started getting trained to start a project directed to the conservation of natural. The Finca Terra Nova for Emaly Quintana and her sister. It's located in San Sebastián, and they have 19 cuerdas in a project that is transitioning from the conventional agriculture to the agroecological and the conservation of natural resources. This project has 2 years and it focuses in pineapple and plantain, and the relationship with the USDA started since last year, 2020. And to speak a little bit about Emaly, Emaly has a bachelor's degree in agricultural science, major in horticulture. She works in the cooperative extension and services of researcher and assistant. She has a master's degree in agriculture, 3 years of experience developing community gardens. And as I mentioned, she focuses in pineapple and plantain for local restaurants. Santa Elena de la Sabana from Edwin Mas and Diego Piñeiro is located in the Fronton, Ciales, Puerto Rico, and they specialize in agroforestry system. They have been 2 years in agriculture, even though they're some of the folks have a lot of baggage doing that, a lot of time with their main cultures is coffee, and Panama. The relationship with the USDA in this new project started since 2019. Edwin is a retired agronomist from the USDA and NRCS, and for 35 years he has experience in the conservation of natural resources. He's written several publications, recognized internationals, and he has worked in technology in places like Pacific, Asia, Central America, and South America. Currently, he directs the Agroforestry, where he does coffee and Panama, and he works in coach as a model of conservation in the program of Champions in Conservation Learning Network. Diego Piñeiro is 18 years of experience designing and installing gaviones and systems of bioengineering to control erosion in Puerto Rico and in the Virgin Islands. He's worked for the U.S. Army for the crop project and is vice president of Hacienda Santa Elena and is owner of 2 different enterprises that specialize in bioengineering and plants for projects. As you have been able to see, we have a very big, robust panel. We wanted to see different aspects, different type of agriculture. Luis is a beginner agriculture. He's starting. Diego and Edwin dedicate more to the engineering and to the agroforestry system. And Diego is dedicated to the conservation of natural resources. So we have, finally, we have Moise Farms, who is from Monica Hernández-Melancon, and she is located in Sunset, Louisiana. And their type of agricultural project is a farm of pork and raw honey and poultry and eggs. The project has been here for 2 years in agriculture. As agriculture and entrepreneur in Louisiana, her and her husband direct him with farm, and they specialize in these projects that I mentioned, and they started doing agriculture, having a lot of experience, and she has utilized all her skills to create innovative products for local markets. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here. We want to do this panel very, comfortable, very good, comfortable, and we want you to provide us with your experience in the conservation of natural resources. I want to ask you to tell me a little bit of those beginnings of your agricultural project. How did this dream start? Let's start with Luis. Luis, tell us a little bit about your experience in this journey. Hello, can everyone hear me well? Yes, we can hear you very well. So thank you very much. Very thankful with the opportunity to mano-Y-ola for having me here with all of you. And before answering the question, I want to thank for this opportunity to be able to speak and to receive the profits of the information that will be provided here. Regarding your question, Jose, um, few years in 2019, I had the opportunity to start this project, this live project, where I had this available farm that had been purchased by my parents, but that had not been developed. So I started to work little by little, facing all the challenges that commonly are experienced by farmers. I understand. I understand that this is beginners and also with experience within this world that is complicated and dynamic, right? So during the process, I had the opportunity to have interactions with several agencies from USDA. We talk about fast service and NRCS. Speaking a little bit with positive experiences, with the attention that I was given to and the time process to register the farm was within the expectations that I was hoping. So in terms of the farm, it is a process that we're doing agroecologically, where the base of the work is respecting the land and ensuring that the conservation processes are done according to the information received and the trainings that I've received. Luis, and I know that we've talked before, and you're someone that comes from the telecommunication industry, and you were 30 years in that industry. How has it been this transition from being a manager in the telecommunication area to come to an ecological area in the mountains of Ponce? How has this transaction been? Good question. Definitely has been completely different. And the telecommunication industry is an industry that is extremely competitive with incredibly fast changes. Sometimes the companies don't have the capacity to be up to the changes that telecommunications are happening in the agricultural area is a little bit more labor intensive in the development in the knowledge that you have to have in order to make it work and to understand that taking care of a farm, it is a business that has a lot of responsibility beyond of the conservation and maintenance of the land, but also ensuring the success of this land. Now we're going to go with Emaly. Emaly, good morning, and thank you so much for being here. We would like to speak a little bit about your experience of and on how that this project started as a farmer. What can you tell us about that?
Estás en mute.
I think you're muted.
Ahora
Buenos
sí.
días, ¿me escuchan?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah, clearly.
Gracias por la oportunidad.
Thank
Primero
you for
que
the opportunity.
todo,
First of all,
comienzo en la agricultura, pues
my
fueron desde niña,
beginnings
a través de las
and
experiencias que
agriculture since I was a child
viví
through
con
the
mis padres, que también
experiences
son
that I lived with
agricultores.
my parents who are also farmers.
Luego mi hermana
And
y yo
my
decidimos
sister and I,
emprender.
we decided
Desarrollamos
to
una corporación
start. We developed a
dedicada a la producción
corporation
de
dedicated to the
plátano y
production
piña.
of plantain and pineapple.
Reconocemos que el
We
plátano y la
recognize
piña
that
son cultivos que
plantain and
usualmente se
pineapple
desarrollan
are crops that usually are developed
intensivamente, así que lo que
intensively. So
intentamos hacer en nuestro
what we
proyecto
tried to do in our project
fue integrar
was
prácticas de
to
conservación para minimizar el
integrate this
impacto
plan of
ambiental que
conversation to
tiene
minimize the
este tipo de producción.
environmental plan that this type of production can cause. Very good. We want to remind all the audience that we have the Q&A feature where you can go and write your questions to our panelists so we can do it at the end of the panel. Emaly, so I mentioned your background. You come from agriculture, you have a master's in agriculture, and you like to educate. Tell us a little bit about your approach to the conservation to natural resources and in your interest in educating the community, the surrounding community and the farmers in having a farm that is dedicated to the conservation of natural resources.
Sí, gracias. Nosotras nos criamos en
Yes,
una
thank you.
agricultura convencional,
We raised in a conventional agriculture
donde no se consideraban
where
todos los recursos
we didn't
naturales
consider
dentro de
all the
una producción
natural
agrícola.
resources during the
Tratar de
production.
desarrollar un cultivo
In
tradicional,
trying to
pues
develop a
entonces nos
traditional crop,
encontramos con
we
esta
found
barrera o este
these
limitante que nos habíamos
barriers or this
sentado, que no podíamos tener
obstacles
ambas cosas,
that
la
we
producción
couldn't have
comercial y la
this thing, a
conservación
commercial
ambiental.
production and the
Así que
environmental
Sister Sync
protection.
ha intentado incorporar
So
esas
what we have
prácticas
tried to
dentro de
do
una
is
producción
incorporate
comercial para
these
servir de
practices in
ejemplo
a
a
commercial
otros
production
agricultores
to serve as,
y
as an
servir, ¿verdad?,
example to
como
other
un
farmers
proceso de
and to
transferencia de
work as a
tecnología para estos
process of
agricultores
transfer
que
of
no
technology for these
necesariamente
farmers that are not
van a indagar
necessarily
información, sino que
going
ven
to
más
look
o aprenden
for
mejor a través de
information or
estrategias
are going
demostrativas.
to
Así
learn
que allí
more
está Sisters
from example.
intentando
So what we're
establecer
trying to do
que sí
is
se
to
puede producir
establish
comercialmente a la vez que
the example that yes,
y
we can
consideramos
commercially
los recursos
produce or
naturales de la
produce to
finca.
sell commercially and protect the environment. Thank you. We're going to go with Diego Piñeiro and Edwin Mas from Ciales, Puerto Rico. Hello. Thank you again for being here. What can you tell us a little bit from Hacienda Santa Elena? I think the name is great. I think it's an hacienda where you have recovered, restored, and then you're providing the love that it needs in this beautiful pueblo of Ciales. What can you tell us about your projects and the experience that you have had with the conservation of natural resources in the agroforestry system? Hello, my name is Edwin. He's Diego. It is a pleasure to be here sharing with all of you. The reality is that I not only share with mano-Y-ola and with Nolo, but we lived it here We leave it here because of conviction, because we know that the conservation is extremely important, right? We got to this project, in my case, after working over 35 years in conservation with the University of Puerto Rico and with NRCS. Everything that we learned, I didn't know it. Everything that I've learned during all this year was the opportunity to transfer it to other people. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it in a farm. We found the opportunity of Santa Elena. Hacienda was abandoned for maybe 20 years, and it had her days of glory with many employees, coffee, plantain, other crops. And we are working on restoring it and recovering it. We have been working little by little, developing the easiest parts to work at the farm, and eventually we will work with the rest of the property. It's a bit big. We want to attend to all the natural resources, uh, all the animals, everything, and the labor that we have in the community that is extremely important for us and for Diego and for I. The human resources that we have in the area is extremely important. So that's why we want to incorporate it. And we have done it since we started working at the farm a couple of years ago. In my background, I not only worked in this, but by default, I was born in a family that produced coffee or cane, sugar cane in Puerto Rico. And that's why I was so interested in agriculture. Um, I raised in urban areas close to the city, but more into the farms. And I think it's very healthy, not just, not just for me, for my body, but for the area. But it is an area that helps me very much. And to be breathing and living this pure air in the mountains, and at the same time be able to help people. Diego, tell us a little bit, what do you think about this project? I know you have a lot of experience in the bioengineer, and you have dedicated yourself to control erosion in different ways. So tell us a little bit about how this project has been for you. First of all, hello everyone. Hacienda Santa Elena, for me, it's a project of extreme importance. Uh, Besides what we're doing in agroforestry and controlling erosion, it's a farm that since as a child I would pass by and I thought it was something spectacular, that it was something that could be preserved at some point. I never obviously thought that I was going to have the opportunity to be developing in later on in life. So I'm pleased to be able to start as an farmer in this area and in the Santa Elena, because my parents do not work in agriculture. My uncles are not, but my parent grandfather is, but none of their children follow this area of agriculture. So before Santa Elena, I started with a farm with plantain, a great scale. Uh, we planted a few crops, and to see this fruit when it's ready to cultivate and to bring it and cook it at the house, that was an incredible feeling. So I have a feeling that it's huge with this, because we pretend to bring through the Hacienda Santa Elena a system of farming, of community awareness that we want to share and to return to the community in a psychological aspect that you can evidence in passing through the hacienda, where we do have the opportunity in the agriculture in the future as a source of income for families, that even though you have setbacks and initial difficulties, perseverance in this area, it's very important, right? Obviously, combined with efforts of agencies and resources that allows us to reach those goals that we have within the farm are fulfilled short and long term, following the needed strategies in the conservation of resources, like he and the rest of the panelists have said.
Yo me imagino, ¿verdad? Que lo que tú piensas.
It's wonderful. I'm very glad to hear. It's nice to see what you went through as a child and then to go back to it now and to be able to restore it and be able to convert it in a center for other folks to get educated in the community. I think that's wonderful. It must be a great feeling. So I really congratulate you for that. Also in the Santa Elena farm, we have also brought training for Champions in Conservation Learning Network for that population. And it has really been a wonderful experience to be able to share with you over there. And we have been able to really provide this important information for participants because in Puerto Rico, we have so many slopes and there's so much agriculture in mountainsides that really require this knowledge so that really we can take care of the environment in the best way possible. Thank you for that information. Now we're going to go to Monica. Monica, good morning. Monica, can you tell me a little bit about your beginnings in this journey of agriculture?
¿Cómo te ha ido con tu esposo en Moise
How
Farms?
things have been going on in your farm with your husband? Please share with us. Hi, good morning to everybody. Nolo, thank you for the invitation. It's the second year that I've been with you. And I think this is so important for folks that want to be able to learn or get information or know more about agriculture. Well, I'm a little bit different because I work with animals. That's the main thing that we work on. We work on animals. And so we have 40 acres over here. And from the beginning, we always thought about the conservation of the land. My Spanish is not 100%. I apologize. I have not had any experience in agriculture before. I was always working in business. I was working, in selling things. But anyways, we started with this challenge. We really had this strong wish to be able to provide nutrition and healthy protein to people through our animals. And these are grown in crop pastures that we rotate. And we learned all of this through the conservation in our CH and to be able to really do things properly. So as you can see here in the background, these are our pigs, and we have divided the different areas to be able to rotate them. That way we are able to conserve the land.
Conservarla, ¿no?
Yeah, it's mainly just to be able to work on conservation. So we work very closely with NRCA. There's a lot of different programs that they have to be able to help out. And I have really learned so much in the last years. I have had to learn a lot because if we don't learn and if we don't know about the different work that you have to do, that is really important.
Finca.
And all the things you have to do for your farm, they're not going to be able to move forward.
Hemos utilizado mucho los
So we have utilized the FSA resources a lot and NRCA. And we have started this year to do a processing plant where we are processing our own animals, and that was financed through the FSA. So I think that we should all have people that we know in both NRCA and FSA that we should collaborate together to be able to really know about all the different programs and projects that they have available, because there's really quite a bit of them. And if you don't take them into account, if you don't learn about these great services, then you can really miss out on a lot of things that are really beneficial for your farm. Thank you. That's wonderful. I'm really glad that you're utilizing the different practices for conservation and that things are going so well in your business. Now we're going to talk a little bit specifically or more in detail about the different conservation practices that you have been implementing in your projects.
Vamos a comenzar con Luis.
So let's start with Luis. Luis, we have a couple of images here that we wanted to show everybody. And this is the La Carreta farm. And we have Luis that has a tool where he's marking all the contours. And we have the mulching and the bedding, which he utilized in order to be able to create this contour farming. Luis, can you tell us a little bit about that, about the conservation practices? How did you start this approach with conservation? Well, everything started in terms of recognizing the land that we were working in. So obviously, it's a very mountainous area in the southern part of Puerto Rico. And as you can see in these pictures, what we are working is to try to identify areas in which we can do different seeding and farming banks and to be able to do recollection of water and protecting the land.
Otra foto, como podrás observar, se puede
As you
ver.
can see in the other picture, you can see the slope that we have in our farm. So we started identifying this and trying to utilize the instruments and to be able to identify the sloping, which is going to allow us to really maximize the space that we're using for farming in such a way that's really friendly, that we're really maximizing the production and the recollection of water so that we can be more effective for those products that we are farming. Apart from that, as you can see, this is also a farm that works under sun and shadow. So once after the Maria hurricane came, we did everything in such a way that we created some barriers to be able to allow to conserve water better in this terrain. And that way we wouldn't lose water due to erosion. You mentioned in previous conversations that you're not only interested in creating conservation practices, but also that information could be shared or disseminated with the community. And I think you had mentioned that you have been working with neighbors and you've been able to share different experiences in terms of improving the soil and what techniques to utilize so they can also do this in their own farm. Sure. So we were able to establish a relationship with neighbors and people that are close to our farm. And that gave us the opportunity to be able to gather with them and to share our experiences. And these inputs allowed them to replicate what we are doing in the La Carreta farm. Like Emaly was mentioning, and also Edwin mentioned, it is like the agriculture from before. It's like the agriculture like your parents and grandparents used to do it. And maybe they did not have some of the benefits or some of the knowledge that we have been able to learn through NRCS, because now you can take even more advantage of these practices, but it has to be done in a way that is respecting the soil, which is the foundation of our production. In this picture, where you have three workers, you have Edwin Mas, when he visited La Carreta farm, and you have one of the other coaches for Champions in Conservation, Heriberto Martinez. So in this program, we focus on how to transfer this knowledge from one person to the other. So we have farmers that are up and coming, like Luis, and they're just beginning. They have to look at farmers that already have more experience with the conservation of natural resources, and that is a way of passing it forward. Passing that information forward so that it does not get stuck with us, but that we can really benefit the overall farming community, especially in the conservation of natural resources. Emaly, let's talk a little bit about your conservation practices in Terra Nova. What can you tell us about this?
Okay, en cuanto a esas,
yes.
Lo que reflejan esas imágenes.
In terms of those images, it is a type, well, this image that you're seeing there, we have the level or contour planting, you see that there's very particular sort of contours sort of in this tropical area. So this perpendicular is just what you see sort of in this mountain. So in order to be able to work in this area, we need to really reduce the runoff waters and to really channel the waters and the filtration of the water. It's also very helpful and helps us a lot just with the crop management in general. This is one of the practices that we have. Also, in combination with that, we also have ditches, which are the small ditches that you see over here, which also helps with I guess the speed in which that water is transported, and also helps us a lot with the filtration, to be able to walk in between, to be able to do applications of different chemicals also as well.
En esta siembra no es común verla en una producción
This
de
is not that common for plantains that we are using here. We normally see that with the coffee, but I adopted it here with the goal of reducing even more the speed of the runoff, because this particular area had a pretty inclined slope of about 40-50%, and that helped me a lot to reduce the speed. And I think this is the water reservation ponds or reservoir ponds. It's an important thing to have, because we do have areas of drought. And sometimes, the water is not distributed in a very equitable way as we wish there were during the year. So we have these water reservoirs to help with these seasons of drought. So this helps to prevent, flooding. It provides water storage. It kind of adds aesthetic too, and it's an important value that we have. And it's like an asset that we have, I would say, in terms of the farm. This also gives us the opportunity to also be like a habitat for wildlife as well. So we had fish to see how that project can work out. Also different, also poultry or different birds. So this is an important challenge. It's important to be able to maintain these practices. Also, we also have the idea of the different paths that we have, so we can also cross the farm in a safe way to be able to do the harvesting and continue with our different practices. We do the weeding with a trimmer, or our goal is to be able to sort of conserve that layer. That's a protective layer. And that helps us in terms of being able to maintain this path. Because we do recognize that the paths also mainly are areas that are susceptible to erosion and can also sort of be affected in terms of the deposits of sediments.
Gracias, Emaly, por esa información. Vamos
Thank you, Emaly, for that information. Let's go with Edwin and Diego. We also have a couple of pictures of what we're doing in the Santa Elena farm. Can you tell us a little bit of how you applied the conservation practices in your farm? So we have started with coffee plantation, coffee farming. We're having a difficult time. Can you maybe get the microphone closer to you? So we have started with coffee farming, like you can see, and we're doing contour farming, and also what they call the tres bolillos, or this triangular method. Apart from that, we're also implementing mulching to be able to preserve that cover. Over here, you can see it a little bit more how that's distributed in terms of the contour. We also are keeping the paths, and we have that area protected, and trying to help with the runoff. I apologize, the sound is not coming through. I apologize, we're having technical sound issues.
perdiendo en el audio.
Yeah, we're losing you with the audio.
En esta foto lo que podemos ver es el recurso agua que tenemos
In
dentro de
this picture, you can see our property.
Lo que estamos observando es parte de la
On the right, what you can see is part of our hacienda or farm in which we're doing a conservation project. And Diego applied for this a couple of years ago. So what we are proposing to do there is to establish different practices, different conservation practices in different parcels of land for the purpose of doing demonstrations and bringing farmers to come and see how this can work in terms of using different cover crops, different structures for retaining sediments. If we can go to the one before, please. Over here, like Diego mentioned, you can see the contours. In this picture, we have some people that are visiting us, and we're talking to them about the use and the management of patchouli in order to do the conservation. That's another practice that we were doing. Next picture, please. And over here, we also have a group of farmers that are visiting us, and we're talking to them about the different conservation practices and the different opportunities that we have for agriculture in the mountain region. Part of what we are doing, because the hacienda is a little bit large, we have 200 acres, and that is mainly for wildlife. And what we are proposing is to be able to improve the diversity, the biodiversity of the vegetation. Because this was a farm that had a lot of coffee that was done in quite large quantities. So we want to do it more diverse now to be able to also attract more birds. We have different kinds of birds. I'm not sure exactly which type of different parrots we have, but we have some parrots. We have a great diversity of birds in the farm. So the idea is to really improve that habitat because we are very close to an area, close to a river called the Rio Encantado, and it's close to a watershed. And that's an area for different water collection. So there's an area that really carries water to different populations in Puerto Rico. So we have to really try to maintain this in the best way possible. So we need to be able to preserve these forests in the area of Ciales. We are in the center of the island, but very close to the metropolitan area of San Juan. Another practice that we have is that we're doing a rain garden and also doing different pest control systems. Thank you, Edwin. Monica, let's go with you now. You had mentioned that you're working with rotational grazing. So what can you tell us about the conservation practices that you have put into place in your farm? You're muted. So we have worked with NRCS about what we could do in our different grazing to be able to conserve whatever's needed in terms of erosion and the different nutrients. So we do plant twice a year 2 different types of mixes of seeds that are special seeds to be able to conserve this pasture area. At the same time, when our animals are eating the leaves of all these different vegetables and plants that are coming from these seeds, and then all the different pasture areas are divided, like the one in the back, we have 10 different rotation areas. So they spend time grazing in one area, in one pasture, and they go to the other, like the pasture area number 2, and that way. And that gives it time for the land, for the vegetables, and for all the green to be able to reborn and to be able to come back up. So that has really been quite beneficial to us, not just in terms of conservation of the land, but also in terms of the nutrition of the animals. Thank you, Monica. So thank you for talking about the different conservation practices. We do have some other questions from the public, and maybe you can respond to some of these. So the first question that we have is, how has been the relationship that you have had with the USDA? And what can you tell us about this experience with the USDA agencies, in particular with NRCS and Farm Services? I don't know, maybe a special comment that you may have about that and about the process that you have had with these agencies. Luis, let's start with you. Yes, good morning again. So the experience that I've had with both agencies in general terms has been quite positive, especially with Farm Service, like I was mentioning at the beginning. The dynamic and sort of the process for our farm was quite effective. In the case of NRCS, I understand that there was a little bit of a slower process due to the timing of the time, so between the time that I applied and then the sort of assignment of cases and funding, there was quite a big gap. So maybe that's something that we can evaluate administratively so that the processes for evaluation and for approval and then support for the farmer, it would be great to look at the processes so that this can be a little bit more effective. Thank you, Luis. What about you, Emaly? What can you tell us about the experience with the USDA agencies? You're muted. Can you hear me now? Okay, in terms of the registration process, it was wonderful. It was really quite easy and comfortable. So with Farm Services, we were able to do it in a digital way, which I think that has been something that's really positive during these times, because we're not able to do things in person anymore. In terms of the NRCS and the conservation practices, I would say that it would be good to really synchronize the plans with the time periods that they're receiving clients, because they're not available the whole year to be able to receive new farmers to visit, and that can really delay the inspection process. So I think I would try to think that better, or open up the window available for you to be able to consider like new clients or new cases. I think that's what I would say for that. Edwin, Diego, tell me a little bit. Originally with Farm Services, it was a little bit complicated. I don't know if it's because of the region that we're in. It took us many months to be able to access this information, or I think it did get a little bit better. It did improve a little bit. In terms of NRCS, I think it has been a bit complicated to be able to finalize this, because the time period between the visit from the technician to then be able to get the contract and then to be able to implement the contract, I mean, that should be done within a period of time that really meets the needs of the agriculture, because that has been a real challenge, because it can take months. And then your conservation practices are necessary at that moment to be able to begin, that you can really preserve the natural resources, the water, the soil. So for those folks that are maybe listening to this panel, I think it's important to take into consideration to really make this process more expedited. And then I am just speaking in the name of Diego Piñeiro. I mean, he has worked for this for a long time. So the technicians that have visited us in the farm do not have the knowledge that they need to have to be able to really know about the soil conservation practices. So the same ones that they are trying to promote, they don't have that knowledge. So they're sending people that are not really fully trained in their areas to be able to come and to support us within the work plan that we're trying to establish. And they themselves are delaying the process because they're self-educating themselves. They're learning about these practices themselves. And we have been really affected by that as farmers because we are not really receiving a response in an adequate amount of time. And this ecological part is really important for us to be able to put into practice to put into implementation these practices. Thank you, Diego. Carlos Suarez. Have you spoken to the directors of the agencies in Puerto Rico to be able to express these concerns? What can you say about that? Emaly. The question from Carlos Suarez is if you have spoken to the administrators of USDA in Puerto Rico to be able to bring forth these concerns that were mentioned. I have not done that myself directly per se. I think it goes beyond that. I think it goes beyond the director. I think you have to reform the system. At least, I don't know, speaking from my point of view, in the beginning, when I was establishing in those starting years, the farm is like a blank canvas when you're just beginning. And during that process, that's when we need more help to establish those main conservation practices. So during that time, we need to not be able to direct ourselves towards one particular person, but to be able to really modernize all the programs based on real needs that people have in terms of farming. And our farming tells us that we are trying to have young people to be able to retake this process of food production in our country. So the country, or better said, the programs need to really adapt and really serve the needs of these emerging farmers. Let's see. So Roberto Rosales is asking us, what have been some of the challenges in starting your business as a Latino, and what would you do different, or what information would have helped you to know what you know now? I think what helped me a lot, I don't know, for the rest, it's for me or for anybody? Oh, let's have Monica. Yeah, let's have Monica respond to that. Can you repeat it, please? Roberto Rosales is saying, what have been some of the challenges for you and for all of you to start your businesses as a Latino, and what would you do different, or what information would you have liked to know, based on what you know now? I think definitely it was a little bit difficult for me because I did not have any experience in agriculture. I had to learn, I had to absorb as much information as possible so that I could be able to act quickly. So I went out and I got as much information as possible to be able to work with the USDA from the very beginning in terms of putting all the practices from NRCA and be able to also help with FSA. My husband was a little bit more skeptical and he was trying to just do it all by himself. But I really pushed him to be able to open up his mind and to be able to obtain more information. There is quite a bit of information and resources. I think what I have learned the most is that you have to really try and look for this information and to really find the solutions for the problems that we have. If you don't look for this information, then you're not going to find it. Well, we want to thank you. Thank you to everybody that was with us this morning for this important information. Thank you for all the participants. There are some questions that different attendees have sent us. So we are going to be able to send you those questions so you can respond to those questions and we can send it to everybody. But unfortunately, we do not have any more time. I wish we had so much more time to be able to share and talk about these experiences. But thank you again for your participation in the panel, and I hope that this information was of use to everybody that's here in this symposium. Thank you, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This type of interaction is incredibly valuable, and I think we need to do a lot more of it. In the interaction, I noticed that there were folks asking questions and communicating that are representing the farmers, but I also see that there are others representing agencies like Carlos Suarez. We have mentioned him. He is the state conservationist in California, and he has done a lot of work also in the island of Puerto Rico and had been instrumental in getting a number of young talent in many states across the U.S. And I think that I say that to say that one very strong comment is just to say how accessible these head of agencies are, directors that are willing and open to listen and make changes. I'm not suggesting that is always easy in all departments and in all the states, but we have to take that opportunity when it's open.